What kind of woman are you becoming? Not what are you doing or what you're building, not the skills that you're adding to your resume. What kind of woman are you becoming? Because I think for a lot of us as we get older, there's something happening underneath the surface. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Hi, I'm Trish, and this is Just a Number, the podcast for women 40 and up who are ready to stop waiting and start building from everything they already know. Part business, part unlearning, part confidence reset. Because you're not starting over, you're evolving with intention. We're talking lived experience, career wisdom, passions, and hard-earned perspective, turned into content, courses, and offers that actually help people. We're not here to play by the rules. Let's build boldly, teach what we know, and make it count. Welcome to Just a Number.
Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. We're not talking about what to build or how to price or even where to start. Today, we're going to go under all of that. We're talking about the feeling, the one that's been sitting with you, maybe for a long time, that tells you something in your life needs to change. And we're going to talk about why it's there, what gets in the way of listening to it, and why the fact that you're changing, that you're becoming something new, is not something to be afraid of. It's actually something worth celebrating. I want to tell you something that I used to say when I was a little kid. You know that question that every adult asks every child on repeat? What do you want to be when you grow up? And kids will say a teacher or a dancer or astronaut or a rock star. I never had an answer like that. I couldn't point to a specific thing. But I also never just said, I don't know, and left it there. What I always said was, I don't know, but I'm going to do something great. And my mom has reminded me of that more times than I can count because it obviously stuck with her too. This little kid who couldn't name the thing, but absolutely had no doubt the thing was coming. And I think about that now because I believe that feeling was always there inside of me. This knowing that I was headed somewhere, even when I couldn't tell you where. I carried that feeling for a long time, through school, through my early career, through years of working inside corporations and organizations, helping them reach their goals. And for a while, the work was good, right? It was interesting. I got to do things I cared about. I was building things, even if it was inside of someone else's walls. Somewhere in my mid to late 30s, something started to shift. It wasn't a dramatic thing. It wasn't like a single moment where everything fell apart. It was more like a pattern that I guess I started to notice. I'd come up with a good idea, something that I thought could have made a real difference in how we were approaching things at work. And it would just sit there, right? Not go anywhere. I'd be in a room and feel like I just wasn't being heard. And I started to notice that the opportunities, those stretch assignments, the leadership roles, the chances to grow and learn and try new things, they were going to other people, younger people, cheaper people. People who were maybe more eager to say the right things in the right meetings. And I certainly don't blame those people. That's not the point of this. The point is that I started to feel like the organization had already decided what I was. And whatever I was, it wasn't someone with a future there. It was someone to manage toward the exit. Now, there's a phrase for this. It's called being put out to pasture. And if you felt it, you know exactly what I mean. It happens in workplaces, in volunteer organizations, communities, and churches, in relationships, in the places where you've given years of your energy and your best thinking. And one day you just realize they've stopped asking. They've stopped giving you room to grow. They filed you somewhere in their minds under handled or done or too old. And it's not always loud or cruel. Sometimes it's just kind of quiet, right? It's this slow withdrawal of opportunity. And it's literally one of the most disorienting feelings in the world because everything looks fine on the outside. You still have the job. You're still showing up, but something inside you knows that something has changed. This feeling is not in your head. It's real. And it's also not the whole story. Because alongside that feeling of being sidelined, there's usually another feeling. This one's harder to identify. I wouldn't call it frustration exactly, and it's not actually burnout either. It's the sense that your life wants to take on a different form, a different shape. That the version of you that exists right now is not the final version. That there's something in you that just hasn't had room to come out yet. You're not the same woman that you were at 20. Think about that for just a moment. At 20, you had energy and optimism and this whole life stretching out in front of you. But you didn't know yet what you were made of. You hadn't been tested. Maybe you hadn't lost things or had to rebuild things or figured out what you actually believe in when it really counts. You didn't have the perspective that only comes from having lived through something. You were just getting started. The woman you are right now, she has things that the 20-year-old version couldn't have imagined. She has decades of experience in rooms where things actually happened. She's made decisions under pressure. She's shown up for other people over and over again. She's figured out what she values, what she won't tolerate, what excites her, and what drains her completely. She knows things, right? Real things, earned things. And that is not less valuable than what a younger person brings to the table. It's actually more. When that feeling shows up, that restless knowing that something needs to change, I want you to understand what it actually is. It's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's not a crisis. It's the woman you've become knocking on the door of the life that you haven't built yet. I felt this for years before I did anything about it. It was like something in the back of my mind that I could turn down, but I could never fully turn off. Sometimes it did show up as frustration. Sometimes it was just this restless feeling, this nagging. And the thing about this feeling is that it doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It gets louder and it finds new ways to show up. For me, it showed up as this constant awareness that there were better ways to do the work I cared about, better ways to teach, better ways to design a learning experience, to actually engage students, and to use tools that fit the moment instead of whatever the organization had purchased 3 years ago and was committed to using forever. I'd known it for a long time, but as long as I was inside someone else's structure, I was always going to have to follow their path, their rules, their definition of what good looks like. And I could feel that closing in on me, the feeling that if I stayed, I was going to spend the rest of my career doing work I knew could be better and never getting the chance to prove it. And I got to a point where I just knew if I stayed, that was never going to change. So why didn't I leave sooner? That's the real question. And I think about this a lot because I talk to women all the time who are in exactly the same place I was. They know something needs to change. They can feel it. But they're still there. They're still waiting. And they're still telling themselves it's not quite the right time. And I understand it because I lived it too. It wasn't that I didn't want to go. I did. It wasn't that someone was telling me I couldn't. Nobody was standing in my way except myself. It was my own voice and my own head running through every practical reason why this was a bad idea. It's not logical. It's not financially smart. At the time, we had a teenager. We have a mortgage. There was no guarantee here, right? There could be no salary, no benefits, no certainty of any kind. That's terrifying. And every one of those doubts had a real reason attached to it. They weren't irrational. They were just fear dressed up to look like wisdom. And I kept attaching reasons to the fear. I kept telling myself it wasn't the right time, that I should wait until things were more stable, that maybe it would get better if I just stayed a little bit longer. I think a lot of you are in some version of this right now, and it might not even be about a job. Maybe it's a community you've outgrown, or a role you've been playing for so long that it stopped fitting. Or maybe it's an idea you've been sitting on for years that you can't quite bring yourself to try. But you're in this place where you know something needs to change, and you're holding on anyway because the known thing feels safer than the unknown thing, even when the known thing has stopped fulfilling you. I wish someone had said to me that the voice in your head that says it's not logical, it's not practical, it's not financially smart, that voice is not necessarily looking out for you. It's protecting you. It's just scared. And fear is not a reason to stay somewhere that you've already outgrown. Fear is just what it feels like to be standing at the edge of something real. Now, I was fortunate in a lot of ways when I actually decided that I wanted to start my own business. My husband was super supportive, and that definitely took some of the weight off. Not everyone has that, and I know that. But I also want to be clear that even with his support, nobody gave me permission. Nobody told me it was okay to go. I had to give that to myself. And that was the hardest part. It wasn't leaving my job. It was giving myself the permission. The nudge that finally moved me came from an unexpected place. It was my boss at the time, the person who could have felt threatened by my restlessness, looked at me one day and said, "Why are you doing this for someone else? Why don't you just start your own company? We'll be your first customer." And something about hearing it out loud from someone who had actually watched me work made the fear smaller than the knowing. It was the moment I stopped waiting for the right time and decided to just try. So what if you try and it doesn't work? It's a good question, but remember this: you can always go back. You can always find another job, another organization, another role. But you'll never know what's on the other side if you don't try. And even if you start small, even if it's just one thing, one idea, one small experiment that you give yourself permission to attempt, there's something about trying that changes you. It tells you something about yourself that staying never could. So back to the question I opened with. What kind of woman are you becoming? I don't think you need to have an answer for this right now. I really don't. This isn't the kind of question that you answer once and just move on from. It's a question you live with. You let it walk alongside you for a while, and you pay attention to what it shows you. But I do want to say this. If you're in your 40s or 50s or beyond, and you're feeling that restless knowing, that sense that your life wants to take on a different shape, that's not a midlife crisis. That is not confusion. That is not you being ungrateful for what you have, or even being dramatic about what you want. That is you becoming. That is the next version of you, just asking for room to exist. You've spent decades building something, not just a career, but actual knowledge. The kind of wisdom that only comes from living through things, experiencing things, from being in the room when it mattered, from showing up when it was hard, from figuring out over time who you actually are and what you actually believe. And somewhere along the way, the world around you may have stopped seeing that experience and knowledge as valuable, may have started looking past you for someone younger or cheaper or louder. That's their loss, not yours. What you know belongs to you. What you've lived belongs to you, and you get to decide what to do with it next. You're changing. You're becoming a new version of yourself, and that is not something to fix or rush or explain to anyone. That is a beautiful thing. I don't want this to just be my story. I really want to hear yours. If this episode put words to something that you've been carrying around, that you've been feeling, that you didn't quite have the language for before, I want to know. Please send me a DM on Instagram and just tell me, what kind of woman are you becoming? There's no right or wrong answer. I just want to hear what's true for you right now. And if you want to keep this conversation going, hit follow so you don't miss what's coming next. Because this is just the beginning of what I think is going to be a really important thread on this show. I'll see you in the next episode.